vibe. Come let we lime, come let we vibe. Lime vibe. Oh, lime vibe.
2, 1. Hi, good afternoon. Well, hello again. Welcome to another episode of the Lime Vibe podcast. I'm your host, Yori Kemp, and I'm sitting here today with Mr. Mark Dalgety. Am I saying that right, Mark? Mark Dalgety?
Yes, correct.
Yes.
Dalgety,
Yes.
Mark Dalgety.
Dalgety. He's a Guyanese living in the United Kingdom, and he manufactures teas, Dalgety teas. So tell me, Mark, how are things going in your part of the world?
Things are going very well. I mean, although the business is based or the headquarters in London, as you know, I mentioned to you that we're actually expanding globally now. On our target is mainly the African continent.
Mm-hmm.
So as I sit here right now, I'm actually sitting at, you notice it doesn't look very cool. I'm actually in Ghana here at the moment, sitting speaking to you.
Wow, you're in the motherland. How lucky are you?
Yeah.
You are in the motherland. Oh,
Absolutely.
my goodness. So before we get into the teas and the expansion into the African market, tell me, how did Mark Dalgety become to be? What's your background? How did you solve? You were born in United Kingdom and moved to Guyana when you were 1 year old, I think?
Yeah, that's correct. Although I'm pretty much Guyanese, but I was born in the United Kingdom. My parents were studying at the time, and they sent me back to Guyana, and I basically arrived there when I was 1 year old. So all of my early education is from Guyana all the way into upper six, as they call it in those days. And then I went back to London when I was about 20. And then I went to study there, and then I went back to Guyana again after I finished studying. I actually started the business in Guyana, and but it was focused mainly on trying to find raw materials in Guyana and the rest of the Caribbean to sell to the more Western countries.
Yes.
Unfortunately, in terms of building a factory, it was difficult to do something like that sitting in the United Kingdom. So I ended up building a factory in the United Kingdom.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, the Caribbean just doesn't have the resources to help right entrepreneurs like yourself, right? So I'm glad you're successful. So what did you study in college? What did you take up?
Actually, by profession, I'm actually a chemical engineer. And so, I mean, I'm not actually a herbalist as such. I mean, in the early days, a lot of people used to contact me, asking me what herb is for this and that. I mean, those are things I pretty much just know from the locals in Guyana. And I mean, my family that from the rural areas, they tend to know a lot about all these different herbal remedies, or I mean, we actually call them bush remedies in the Caribbean. It only becomes herbal tea when it gets into Europe. But I mean, when it's in the Caribbean, we just call it bush tea.
Bush tea, yeah. So I guess
Exactly.
you know about things like fever grass tea and things like that, right?
Oh yeah, we do all of that, but we have it well packaged in tea bags. So it's not, I mean, if you think about a modern day consumer, which was the concept in the first case, I mean, back in the Caribbean, you have the time to go take the fever grass, put it in a pot, boil it, wait for the pot to boil and all these things, But I mean, once you start getting into these parts of the Western parts of the world, nobody has time to do that. So the whole idea was basically introducing some Caribbean flavors into the European market, but have it packaged in a format, right, that is conducive to the speed at what they will be moving at, which is basically have it in a tea bag. You put your tea bags into hot water, brew it for 1 minute, and you have your fever grass right there and then,
Yeah. So how have Europeans been receptive to the Caribbean flavors, so to say? Are they clamoring for it? Is it really a good market for you?
Yeah, it is a good market. I mean, but then also it depends on who you're targeting. As you know, these is very humongous markets. I mean, the United Kingdom itself has about 60 million people. Of that 60 million, the ethnic minorities, what they call ethnic minorities, are people that come from anywhere apart from Europe. So basically, it's made up of the Caribbean people, Africans, Indians, Chinese, Middle Eastern folks. I personally focus most of my efforts on just that sector of the market, which is the 5 to 6 million people. So Dalgety brand is pretty much strong within that sector of the market, not so much the European market. I mean, most of our online sales, that goes into the European market, because I mean, our products are mainly distributed on what I call all the high the metropolitan cities in the UK and in Europe. So I mean, like in the Londons, the Birminghams, Manchester, any major city that has a high population of people from various parts of the world. So if you get into Scotland or somewhere like that, you probably wouldn't see Dalgety teas in the average shop, unless you find some form of some guy from India or Pakistan that might have a shop that caters for the students that came from across Africa and the Caribbean, and then you probably find Dalgety teas in those retail shops.
I got you. So let me ask you a question, Mark. How is the phytosanitary measures? Is there any particular security or health and safety measures you have to pass in order to get these teas to the European market?
Oh yeah, I mean before it's shipped, in any jurisdiction that you're exporting, and once it's food, you have to get something called a phytosanitary certificate, which normally is governed by the jurisdiction that you ship it out of. They're normally responsible for making sure that any food stuff that they're exporting to any other part of the world should be up to a certain sanitary standard. When that arrives in the UK then has its own health authority that would now double check on the product that you're bringing into the country to make sure it is of the standard that the origin country has indicated it is. Obviously, if a country begins to sell a tremendous of bad stuff that they're given certificates for, it doesn't help that country, because eventually they could either get blacklisted, because that means to say that their health.
Tell me a bit about your upbringing, growing up in Guyana and then coming back to the United Kingdom.
Well, growing up in Guyana is great. I don't think I could have had a better upbringing than growing up in Guyana or in the Caribbean. I mean, when I compare myself to some of the folks that I've met that would have grown up all their lives in the United Kingdom, I think I feel extremely privileged to have grown up in Guyana, and I have obviously friends from pretty much from when I'm 5 years old, that I'm still in contact with there. But Guyana is a very interesting country in terms of the fact that, apart from the fact that it has 6.
Oh, you broke up again, Mark. Hello. Hello. Hello.
Guyana is an interesting country. Yeah.
Guyana is an interesting place.
Guyana is an interesting country because, apart from the fact it has 6 races that brought different cultural differences to it, which is the 6 races of the Black, Indian, Chinese, Portuguese. There's a mixed race. There's the original Amerindian race. The thing about it, each one of them brought a different culture, and the cuisine is unbelievable. Guyanese tend to boast that we almost make a better curry than a guy from India, because it actually has a fusion from Africa and other parts of the world.
Yes. So how is it growing next door to Suriname in particular? Because you guys are similar. It's just that one side speaks Dutch and your side speaks English. So is any kind of family members attached in Suriname, or any kind of relationship in Suriname between Guyana and Suriname? Because you have the same ethnic background, Indian, African, Chinese. So tell me a bit about that dynamic. Go. So tell me, Mark, tell me about how it was growing up in Guyana.
Yes, growing up in Guyana was magnificent. I feel privileged to have a chance of growing up in Guyana, compared to some of my colleagues that I know that grew all their lives up in the United Kingdom. As you know, Guyana has got 5 races that is made up of, Indians, Black, Portuguese, Europeans, the Amerindians, the mixed race. And each one of them brought a different culture, different cuisine, a different behavioral pattern, which is fused into a country that has tremendous, beauty about it.
Yes.
As I said, in some cases that Guyanese boast that the Indian curry from Guyana is almost better than one from India, or a Chinese fried rice, or chow mein is nicer than the one from China.
Oh wow!
Because what's happening is that it's blended with spices from different parts of the world.
Yes.
And that's the cuisine part. But then you also have the situation in terms of Guyana is not like the rest of the Caribbean, where it's obviously on the mainland, and it's a very country with a lot of resources and minerals.
Yes.
So it's a more industrialized than most of the other countries, based on the fact that, there's bauxite, there's gold, there's diamond. I mean, as you know now, Guyana's now got oil.
Oil, yeah,
So
yeah. Black gold.
they now say the oil republic of Guyana. I mean, 55 billion barrels. I mean, it's now within the top 10 oil producing countries,
Yes, already.
So, I mean, somebody like myself, obviously studying, yes, and I mean, I grew up around, my parents are professionals. I mean, my dad is an industrial chemist. My mom was a sociologist. So, I mean, I grew up, I mean, the things that I'm doing is not something I think I've never done, because I grew up among uncles building buildings, building roads, and, doing things that sometimes I think when folks are, at least, people of African origin grew up in certain parts, they might not get a chance to experience people like themselves doing things, because a lot of the jobs are more to do with the lower end of the spectrum than the highest end of the spectrum, in terms of being architects and literally building buildings and roads and highways and things like that, or running a whole industry, extracting bauxite from the ground, and aluminium and all these various things. And I grew up within an environment like that,
Okay.
So I mean, me building a factory in the United Kingdom was, it was not something that I didn't think I couldn't do,
Okay. So tell me, how was that transition from seeing all of that when you were growing up and now, manufacturing teas now? Because I guess it's a process where you have to actually find the raw products and then get it to your manufacturing plant. So tell me how that's been spurred on by your experience.
Well, I mean, the first thing is normally the first challenge is just getting the material done in the right way. And as you know, something like herbal teas or bush tea, as we were called in the Caribbean, is not a conventional product. It's not a rice and sugar with years and years of experience or anything like that,
Yes.
So, I mean, what we find in Guyana, and not only Guyana, the rest of the Caribbean, we buy obviously from Jamaica, the Trinidad, the Barbados, and so forth, is that what we have is like not one farmer with 100 acres, is 100 farmers with 1 acre.
Yes.
So it's a lot of logistics with regards to, first of all, teaching all of them how to dry and cure the product in the right manner to maximize holding the flavor. So that took a number of years, to say it wasn't like a 1 month situation, it was literally years, and teaching them how to do it the right way. Then there's always the volumetrics part of it, because once you start hitting some of these products, you got to go to certain villages like in Guyana and then, form a cooperative and get them to start collecting. You have one major guy who's collecting probably even from 2-3 villages. So then when we send our trucks, then we're not going to collect 2 bags or something like that. After, as you know, Guyana is a massive country. I mean, in some parts of Guyana, it could take you over a day to get to one part.
Wow.
So, I mean, you want to make sure you go there with a full truck load to come back down, because, I mean, it's not that straightforward. So, I mean,
is it difficult?
I would say that was the first challenge in terms of us getting the raw materials. Yes. You know.
Has it been? I mean, I can imagine it's difficult because there's different people from different villages. You have to gather them all up in the cooperative. So tell me a bit about the cooperative. How big is cooperative now in Guyana?
You know what? It's very unstructured, because I mean, you might find that you might have a head guy. You always have to have a head guy that is doing something, and a particular thing tends to happen every number of years. Yeah. Normally, these guys might start by being not very well off, a bit underprivileged. But then once we start engaging them, they start to begin to do very well.
Yes.
But what tends to happen, ironically, is that obviously going into the farms and we call them back dams in Guyana, is involved getting mud on your foot,
Oh, wow.
So as soon as these guys begin to get a bit of money, the next thing they normally do is either go and buy a car and become a taxi driver, or they build a house and open some sort of grocery shop.
Yeah, they have no respect for farming.
Exactly. So you tend to find that you forever, ever, 4 years or whatever, 3 to 5 years, keep having to continue looking for a new guy or a new village to get somebody engaged.
Yeah, there's nothing stable.
I mean, it's all good at the end of the day, because I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, the only thing that makes me laugh is that if you think that this is the formula that got you out of the poverty that you're in, right? why would you stop doing it to go and do something? Because what happens also with these same guys is that 5 years later, they come back because the car is either broken down, right? Okay. Or the shop is not doing as well as they thought it was going to do. So then they have to come back to do the same thing to get the money to potentially help to keep the car on the road. So
they could have just stayed inside the industry all their lives and have no problems, right?
yes,
I see it here as well too. You know, I see it. It's all over the Caribbean. I guess people always want to look at the grass is greener on the other side. They always want to upgrade and want more, and that's endemic around the world. But I guess, you know, how do you encourage them to stay into the farming business, Mark? I mean, what would you tell them?
To tell the truth, I really just can't get involved with encouraging them because it gets very. I mean, a lot of times people will always do what they think they want to do. You know. Yeah. All we do is that we understand what begins to happen. You know, if they get a car, we congratulate them. We feel very pleased because we see that as an upward movement anyhow. It's just quietly, I always wonder why didn't they, continue doing what they're doing, you know, because obviously, you know, you could use that money and get your kids into university, or use that money and build a bigger house, or use that money and buy another piece of land, or use that money. You know, there's so many things that you could do instead of going buying a car, which is a depreciated asset.
Yes.
Yeah.
They have the mind on what they see on television, huh?
Yeah. So all we do is just keep moving and find another person, you know. Because we don't have time to be teaching people that part. I could teach them how to drive the stuff and do the right things, but not how to live their lives. You know?
That's true. I got you. That's good, Mark. That's good. So tell me, how is it now? You have plans on branching out from selling teas to, let's say, coffee or cold drinks or something like that, or are you just going to stick with teas?
At the moment, we stick with teas. I mean, we do actually do some what we call non-tea products, because we actually do something called power bitters. We do noni juice. I once made a pepper sauce also, which people still ask me for, because occasionally you do things. I mean, as an entrepreneur, you see opportunities, and sometimes I get a bit excited and start doing other things. But you know, at the end of the day, the core business is tea. And I mean, what we try to do is build a global brand. You know, we try to be like Lipton or Twinings. You know, So sometimes, as much as you see other opportunities in other products, you know, and each product, to get it to a different level or at a certain level, there's certain dynamics that you have to deal with. So although something might look back to the situation you spoke about with regards to the grass looking green on the other side, at every level that we try to take the tea, I mean, like for instance, the first level was in the UK, get it into the market. So then it's obviously we coming in as underdogs. So then it's obviously the market we search to get the shops to begin to buy our products and I mean, or add it to the existing products that they have.
Yeah.
Then you have
the English love teas.
Yes, exactly. You know. So, and then I mean, you might hit one city, you get London first, then you move to Birmingham, then you move to Manchester. Once you cover the United Kingdom, then you start looking where else could we sell to. And in each country, sometimes you find different cities, different communities only like certain teas. You know, I mean, you know, you might find, you know, let's say Jamaicans, they love Cersei. Cersei is what in Guyana we call Corilla. It's the bitter. It's all about diabetes, you know. But then the white community would not necessarily drink Cersei because they want a cup of tea that they could eat some biscuits and cakes with. You know, so these things, you know, you have to understand, and I mean, it takes time. So when you keep thinking that of jumping from product to product, the only jumping we would do is developing new teas that is related to something different. You know, like I mean, we have 35 lines of teas. I mean, and they're all in different families. So we have turmeric teas, moringa teas, peppermint teas, ginger teas, lemongrass teas, chamomile teas, you know, instant teas.
And all of these teas are procured in the Caribbean, in Central America?
Well, most of it, I would say now for the first 15 years or so, most of it was all around the Caribbean. But now we expand. We have a lot of it coming out from Africa and Asia.
Wow. And that's why you're in Africa now.
Yes. Because I mean, when you start getting to higher volumes, the Caribbean literally cannot deal with it, you know. And I mean, also then there's the thing why you have to also reduce the risk factor is the fact that, I mean, as you know, different things happen in different economies, whether it's a hurricane, an earthquake, a political instability, or whatever, you know. So in order to minimize that risk with regards to the supply chain, you have to make sure you start ensuring that you could get your commodity from more than one jurisdiction.
Yes.
Yes.
Indeed.
And then the seasons also, different parts of the world have different seasons at different times. So when one season you might be able to get ginger a lot from one country, another country might not be in season. So then you move on to the other country when the season starts again.
I got you. So
yes.
so tell me about the effort you put in to making sure that you source materials from all these other different countries, from Africa and Asia, you say, and the Caribbean and Central America. What kind of effort goes into that, Mark? I can imagine it's a lot of work.
What you tend to find is that once you get established, occasionally it's a lot to do with networking. Also, we go to exhibitions. I mean, I go to exhibitions all over the world, at least in the early days. So when you go to exhibition and you're trying to sell your product, you also maybe who are trying to sell you products or raw materials. Yeah, because if I go to exhibition, I'm going to exhibition to try and sell my tea.
Yes.
Right. But then I also, at that exhibition, I would look for people who might be in my business that is supplying the raw materials that I'm looking for. So once you start going to exhibitions internationally, you begin to meet people from various parts of the world, from whether it's South Africa, Zimbabwe, Poland, in Eastern Europe, Russia, wherever. And then you begin to find that some of these people could supply some of the raw materials, and some of them are looking for markets. And then another thing you find is that different parts of the world also have similar products but call them different names. So we then actually sometimes change the names in certain jurisdictions, or at least add on the name. Like for instance, sorrel, for instance, in the Caribbean, we have this red flower we call sorrel.
Sorrel,
but in Africa, like in Ghana here, they call it sobolu. In Nigeria, they call it bisak. Yeah. I mean, this lemongrass is a good one. A lot of countries call it fever grass.
Fever grass,
so we have to call it lemon fever grass.
So anyway, they have fever grass in Poland?
Oh, no, they don't have fever grass in Poland, but they do have, like, say, peppermint in Poland.
Peppermint,
yes.
Yep, good.
Yes. So they will have some products. So not every country has, and that's another thing, not every country has every single thing. But then, I mean, they drink a lot of herbal tea. Some of it they import from India. So we then muscle in on the fact that we bring it from the Caribbean. And in many cases, I always find that ours tend to be stronger because the Caribbean has a much stronger, I think, soil. And I don't know if it's I don't know what it is, but yeah, we always tend to have a much better quality or flavored product. So if you get lemongrass here from India and you try the lemongrass from the Caribbean, the lemongrass from the Caribbean is 100% better flavored than the one from India.
That's a good word for the Caribbean, because they've been beating down on our Caribbean agriculture over the last 40, 50 years. They say we can't produce anything agriculturally. That's why we have to import all of our food and whatnot. But you're saying something totally different, that we have the adequate soil to produce quality products out of the ground. Is that true?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think when they say quality, they might be talking about the technology. And also what the Caribbean might suffer from is also the volumes that it could do, especially the small islands, you see.
Yes.
I mean, when you meet some folks out in this part of the world, especially in Africa, I mean, you find a guy that has a farm that probably is bigger than Barbados, and that's just one guy.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I met a Nigerian guy many years ago who had a farm, and he said the length of the farm was like driving from London to Brighton, which is almost 60 miles in.
Farm. Wow.
So I mean, it's a total different level of volumes you talk about when you start moving to these parts of the world, and the capacity that certain farming guys would have.
Yeah. So you keep going back to Africa. So tell me about your time in Africa now. Let's talk about that. Let's hear about your time in Africa. So how's things going in Africa, Ghana right now? You're in Accra, I guess, right?
It's going pretty good, I would say. It's not excellent because it's early days. I mean, we've only been here for like about 2 years now. Yeah, so we definitely might be on the dogs, but our attraction to come to Africa is because, as you may or may not know, I mean, the whole African continent is at minimum has got about 1.5 billion people.
Yes.
Yeah. So our targeted market in the United Kingdom was mainly people from the ethnic minorities, as I said, across Africa. So we felt instead of spending more money trying to get into Europe, where we would have to go through more dynamics in terms of languages, packaging languages, because as you know, next to the UK, you would have France, that's French. Germany, that's German. Spain is Spanish. You go into the Norwegians, they have their own language, okay? And I mean, believe you me, when you go there, they want you to put their language on. Whereby if you go to Africa, I mean, although there's thousands and thousands of different dialects, most people at least know English.
Yes, yes.
So, and there's also the consumers that we were dealing with anyhow. So we just felt that, I mean, in terms of capacity building, I mean, it would be easier to come here, right? I mean, as I said, Ghana is still one of the smaller countries on the African continent. There's 30 million already. But the one that be more interested in is Nigeria, which is approaching 300 million people.
Wow.
So, I mean, if you even become the star boy in one village in Nigeria, I mean, there's villages in Nigeria that got 10, 20 million people. And that's a village. Some people, when they think of villages, they think of a village in the Caribbean that might have about 1,000 or 500 people. But I mean, I met Nigerian guys who say, oh, I came from my village. How many people live in the village? We have 5 million in my village.
They make it sound so homely, like it's like, only about 4,000 people or something, but it's 5 million people, man.
Exactly. And that's his village. That is not even the city. That's his village. You know?
So you sound like you're having fun in Ghana, man.
Oh yeah. I mean, definitely. I mean, obviously, as coming from an African background, at the end of the day, they call us diasporians. At least that's our origin at the end of the day. So, and Ghana is very much a very stable economy. I mean, at least one of the more stable ones consistently for the last probably 20 years or more, in terms of government stability. It's a reasonably well-developed economy, I mean, there's nothing here that I cannot get that is missing from whether you're in the USA or London, everything is here, full stop, I mean, roading, you name it, I mean, everything is here, I mean, sometimes I find that when Western countries portray certain African countries, they consistently portray it as people starving.
And
when you come
people
here,
living in huts, right? Hunting lions and tigers and stuff like that, right? Yeah, pure ignorance.
You begin to meet folks that would never ever want to live in America or in the USA because, I mean, I mean, businessmen over here, I mean, they even think, I mean, some of them, among them even moving in private jets, they almost feel that catching first class is like being a loser because the aspiration is to have a private jet, or some of them already, they're looking at the other guys and what the other guys are doing. So it's a total different level of ambition and capacity that these guys think about over here,
So are you saying that Africa is coming up now out of the dark ages it had over the last, I would say, 100, 200, 300, maybe 400 years or so?
I think there's always a sector that has been way up there at the end of the day. It's not that it's coming up. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of people that are potentially in some form of poverty. But then the high rollers, as I call them, are real high rollers. And I mean, looking at between, say, Ghana and Nigeria, I mean, it's not, 5 millionaires, thousands and thousands of them, So, and I mean, in different in different sectors of work, whether it's not necessarily oil and gas, it could be food, it could be, you name it, recycling, garbage collection, trucking, transportation, freight liners in terms of rental of planes, you name it, I mean, you just see, you just meet all kinds of folks and you don't see anything else other than black folks.
That's good. So there's not that undercurrent of, let's say, Europeans backing some of these black entrepreneurs and millionaires, or Indians backing some of these black entrepreneurs in Ghana? It's pure black?
I'm not sure. I mean, that's an interesting question that you just asked. I mean, I just don't see the Europeans, but I mean, I don't know, they probably might be getting finance from Europe sometimes. But then, I mean, some of the African banks are also pretty strong. So, I mean, even if you go in there, I mean, the bank is an African bank, and I mean, the finances from an African bank. I mean, I don't know where the thing. So, but what is normally interesting is that normally when you're in Europe or in America, ultimately there's always somebody of a Caucasian back in that is doing something. What I find over here is that, you go to a mall, and the mall is, I don't know, 50 acres big, and the landlord is a Ghanaian guy. You know what I mean? And I mean, even if he's renting the space out to, I mean, there's few Lebanese that have good businesses over here, but they don't own the land. They don't own the building that they're in. So they're just renting from the Ghanaian guy that owns the whole mall.
Gotcha.
You know,
Gotcha.
or I
That's
mean,
good.
you find a guy that is into real estate. That's another thing about it, right? You know,
Mhm.
like in Guyana, somebody might be into real estate, and you hear them building 2 or 3 houses. Over here, you hear a guy say, "Oh, I have a real estate plan here. I'm building, you know, I don't know, 5,000 houses."
Wow.
You know,
A
yeah,
whole
but I mean,
subdivision. Yeah.
but that's the kind of level you know, like in Nigeria. I mean, I have never met the person personally, but this guy that's building has a project on building 60,000 houses. You
Wow.
know, yeah. But when you
60,000
think of the
houses.
population, but what I'm saying that's the kind of capacity these guys think about. You
Good, good.
know,
Because there's a lot of people to
when you're in
serve,
this
isn't
part
there?
of the world.
There's a lot of
Yes.
people to serve, isn't there? There are thousands and hundreds of thousands of people out there in some of these villages that need housing, that need support.
Yes,
And
millions, not even hundreds of thousands. You have to start with the word millions
millions.
and
Wow.
tens of millions. You see what I'm saying?
So this is a
So I
growth
mean,
market then.
yeah, absolutely. And the market is very young. So what you find in Africa, at least where I'm hanging around, almost 60% of the population is literally below 60-70% below 40 years old.
Wow.
So there is a very young population and very, very bright, dynamic youngsters, you know, doing all kinds of stuff to survive, you know, that is just, you just see different things when you're here. I mean, I get, you know, inspired by things that I see, you know.
That's good.
Definitely when I'm in this part of the world, you know.
Did you meet any of your cousins, your old cousins or ancestors? Did you have a chance to track down some?
I've never met, but I obviously went on the tours or the historical tours through, you know, the slave castles and things like that. You know, so there's certain ritual things in terms of a spiritual well-being. You know, I have done those things. You know, where they explain slavery, how it started, why it started, you know, and things like that, you know.
So how did you respond to that, seeing that some of your brothers over there that you met, they are ancestors of the people that actually sold you? How do you feel about that?
I mean, to tell the truth, I don't really have I wouldn't say I don't have an issue about that, but I look at things in a different way. Like in Ghana here, when you go to the castle, there's this door they call the door of no return, right?
Yes.
But I said to one of my Ghanaians, but I don't see it as the door of no return. I see it as the door of the returned.
Yes.
So, you know, at the end of the day, I made it back. You know, whether my spirit would have been there 400 years ago, the bottom line is that I've made this full circle and made it back.
Yes.
Which means to say that ultimately I'm a survivor, or my spirit is a survivor, or the African is a survivor. You see what I'm saying? You know? Yeah. Because I mean, the past slavery, it came and it went. And even within all the things that have happened to people of African descent, we've always survived and rise above all adversity against us.
Yes.
So to me, it's more important to understand that, you know. And the other thing too is that when you get here, the place is so humongous. There's some folks that don't even know slavery existed.
What, you kidding me?
Yeah, because you remember that, I mean, when they have all these millions of people, right? There's some villages that never lost anything. And they just live in the world that they're living in, right? So, I mean, we might think that, okay, they said 40 million or over 400 years. I think they said 30 or 40 million people were lost from the African continent. But when you divide that 400 years by so many millions, then it comes down to probably say 10 million a year. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the figure is, right? Let's say it's 5 million a year or whatever, okay? Right? Or even 10 million a year. In relation to how many people were on the continent, there's people that don't actually realize that it even happened, you know? So, I mean, you know, I could remember in the early days, I had a colleague from London. We were in the markets over here. And we were doing a sales pitch to a guy in a retail shop, and he was saying, "Oh, you know, this tea is actually made by a company of someone of black origin, you know, African origin." And the guy looked a bit puzzled, you know, because but when I saw his face, I think he was just thinking to himself, well, who else could it come from? You know, because that's the only people he deals with. You know,
wow, that's amazing.
Whereby if I'm in the UK or in America and you say something like the Caribbean, people resonate it and say, "Oh, this is one of our people. Let me support the brand."
Yes, indeed.
You know, yeah.
Wow, it's amazing they live in that bliss. You know, They didn't even
Yes.
know that slavery happened, man. That's amazing. I thought everyone knew that slavery happened, or
No,
at
no, no.
least
There's
like the
guys in this
Holocaust.
part of the world that literally don't know, some, and then there's people who also think, I mean, well, what's your problem? I mean, because,
Wow, what?
remember that, because obviously when we come from the Caribbean, and especially the American guys, they come with the attitude, yes, this, that, white guys, and I'm like, what's wrong with you? Just calm yourself down,
Yeah.
Because, I mean, one of the things that you realize is that slavery in itself, in the early days before the Europeans came, there was slavery in Africa. But the slavery was related a lot towards someone probably getting into debt and having to go and work off their stuff. And they eventually would have been assimilated into the tribe and so forth.
Yes,
and,
yes.
And I think a lot of the Africans also, when these slaves that, for instance, were sent to the New World, some of them don't know where they went to and what the conditions they were under.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I read that. Then they thought that
so
it was the kind of slavery they had, and they didn't realize the kind of oppression that we were suffering. And it was only until a king from Ghana, I think it was, he realized that, hey, these people are suffering over in this new world. We have to do something. Then he started to fight back. I can't remember the king's name. Sorry, the name escapes me. But yeah. And then he realized it was what was happening to their brothers and sisters that they were selling. To me in particular, I mean, while I know that there was slavery in Africa, I still blame our brothers and sisters on that side for selling us.
Oh yeah. I mean, of course you have to blame everybody because it was just seen as a trade. And then the other thing you have to realize, a lot of times when people were selling other people, they weren't selling guys from their tribe.
Yeah.
Just like how Europe had different wars between the different clans, whether it was England and France or whatever it is.
Yes.
You remember that all these countries like Nigeria and Ghana and so forth, right? It all for false countries. Because I mean, most people are only committed to their tribe and their chief or their king.
Yes.
So the borders, I mean, like say there is Hausas, for instance, right? Hausa tribe who are Ghanaians and Hausa tribes who are Nigerians. But their respect is only to the Hausa king. They don't really have time with the president of Ghana or the president of Nigeria.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
since the
if,
Europeans
for
carved
instance, if they're in a turmoil with another guy like a Yoruba tribe and they capture him and sell him as a slave, they don't really have a problem with that because it's not their brother. They don't see it as a brother, they just see the guy from the other tribe.
Wow.
Right? So it's a bit complicated, you see what I'm saying?
Is it still an ethnic strife in Africa now where the Yoruba tribe against the Igbo tribe and the Igbo tribe against the Hausa tribe? Is it still going on there?
Oh yeah. I think that's probably one of the destabilization effects of the country of the continent, because at the end of the day, in most of these kingdoms, as we call them, is that their allegiance is mainly to the king and not necessarily the president of the country. I mean, I was told that even in Ghana here, when they get a president, the president literally has to, once he's sworn in, he actually has to go and get some sort of okay from the Ashanti king. Because if he doesn't do that, or the Ashanti king doesn't really okay him, he literally can't really serve. Well, he can serve, but he wouldn't find it very easy. You know what I mean to say? Yeah.
Wow.
So he has to go and bow to the Ashanti king. So indirectly, I mean, he is almost as if the Ashanti king, which is one of the biggest kingdoms in Ghana, of the Akan tribe, is in control because those are the big commercial guys. That's the part where, as you know, the Gold Coast, where a lot of the gold came from, and the golden stool. So as you begin to understand that dynamics in this part of the world, as I said, I mean, you go to Nigeria, the Hausa tribes are one of the largest ones, right there to the north. Yoruba is down to the east or the west. No, Igbo is to the east, Yoruba is to the west. But a lot of times, these folks' allegiance is to their king, not to President, wherever his name is.
Yeah. That's amazing, man. It's still shocking me that they didn't know about slavery, though. That still shocks me to this day.
It shocked me also when I came, because as you begin to move, because I mean, obviously we are always looking for raw materials.
Yeah.
So as I'm in Ghana, I move into remote villages because we're looking for ginger, we're looking for various things, So I mean, we meet different tribes. I mean, and what's interesting, you could go from one village to the other, it's like 2 miles apart, and they speak a totally different language, and
Wow.
they totally different language from village to village, literally. And they don't even know English. So normally we have to walk with one person who probably knows about 5 languages. And then when we enter there, right, then he would ask what language they speak, you know, and then sometimes I've met a village where none of them spoke any of the languages this guy spoke until they had to go call some guy way back deep in the village who said he knew one language that a guy knew, you know.
So how is it challenge now selling teas to these people now? I mean, you have to speak 5, 6, 7 different languages on a given day. I mean, selling teas is going to be a tremendous burden, man. So tell me what's your strategy for now selling teas, Dalgety teas in Africa?
At the moment, what we're doing, we're focusing because the market is humongous, and that's one of the reasons why I spend a lot of time here now. And what we decided to carve out is that we focus a lot on what they call modern supermarkets. So modern supermarkets are pretty much the big supermarket chains like you would see in the UK, like the Tesco's and so forth. Yeah. And these supermarkets have a lot more imported, well-packaged products. So we focus a lot more on them because what you find is that most of the upper end of society tend to shop there. And the upper end is probably still easily about, say, between, at least in Ghana, I think it might hit at about, say, 5 million people or so. So because you can't just attack 30 million people just like that, you see?
Yeah.
So you normally have to carve out a sector of the population or a sector of the community that you feel you want to target. And that's pretty much where we're targeting right now.
Wow.
So we haven't gone into the villages to try and sell. We're just focusing on all the bigger supermarket chains.
So how's your experience? No, go ahead. Finish what you're saying.
No, I was going to say, people with more disposable income.
Yes. So how has your interaction been with the Ghanaian people? I mean, how's it been working back and forth with them? Has it been difficult? Because I find that the ones, not Ghanaians though, I find them to be peaceful people and they're pretty straightforward. But the Nigerians are often kind of aggressive, aren't they?
That is correct, actually. That's the reason why that's the reason why we came to Ghana first. Because I'm using really, although we're very much interested in Nigeria, the reason I came to Ghana is really to practice. And they say walk before creep before you walk.
Yes.
Because I do deal with a lot of Nigerian guys in London. Yeah. They're actually more business oriented. The Guyanese are business oriented also, but more calmer. Okay.
Yeah, they're calmer, yeah. It's
like
the difference between the
Chinese
on the mainland and the Taiwanese. If you go to Taiwan and China, you see the same people, you see a totally different change in the attitude. One side is more stiff and more uptight, and the other side is more like relaxed and loose. And you count that to the government, because one side is communist and the other side is a democracy. So they have, while they're the same people, they act totally different mannerisms. Yes. And you see that in Ghana and Nigeria.
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I always start at ground zero, because the thing about it is that, I've been to Nigeria before, not recently, but about 9 years ago. And I found there were Nigerians just as calm as Ghanaians. And I'm pretty sure there's Ghanaians that are just as aggressive as Nigerians. So I always approach everyone from ground zero, and then you work out what temperament you're dealing with.
Yeah.
Because if you start putting everybody into one box, you can find yourself either misinterpreted people automatically because you just feel that, oh, you come from Ghana, that's how you are. Or you come from Nigeria, you're a fraudster. When Nigeria's got 300 million people, and probably the fraudsters is probably no more than 1 or 2 million. But then if you have 1 million fraudsters running around the world, is a substantial amount of them. But in relation to the society that they came from, they're a minority still. But then the amount of havoc that they created around the world, because there's 1 million of them.
The 411 scam, right?
Give the 999 million a bad name.
Okay, I got your point. Let's step away from the Nigerian bashing then. Let's step away from the Nigerian bashing for a second then. So you're enjoying Ghana. So after Ghana, now, what's your next step?
Well, our next step is really Nigeria. So this year we're going to be moving into Nigeria. We are already set up systems to start moving into Nigeria. So this is where we're going to be using Ghana as the base. heading into Nigeria.
So Mark, you're a
So
mogul. You're a mogul, man.
yes,
You're big time, man. You're going straight across the world, man. You're big time. So I mean,
yep.
you're exceptional because there's not a lot of Afro-Caribbean persons like yourself making these kinds of moves around the world. So what do you credit your drive to, or your passion to?
I just like to. I mean, let's see how I could put it in a one-word sense. I like to be good at what I'm doing, and I like to succeed at what I'm doing. And I always feel that, I mean, you know, if you have got a product to sell, I don't see any reason why I should limit myself to sell it in Georgetown only, or in Brixton in London only, or something like that.
Yes.
You know, I mean, you know, you want to sell to the world at the end of the day, you know.
Yes.
And I mean, I think it's important even as Caribbean people, you know, I mean, we've got a lot to offer the world, and there's no reason why we should just stick in that one country or one island and think, you know, I mean, that's it, you know.
Yes. Yes.
You know, and I mean, I'm also driven by the fact that, I mean, what I do, we obviously improve the livelihoods of a lot of farmers, whether it's in the Caribbean and in Africa and so forth, and communities and so forth, you know. So that also drives me, because, I mean, you know, nothing is better than, you know, when you go there to work and you know that it's not just your immediate family that you're working for, but it's hundreds of small communities, hundreds of little farmers across the world that depend on you to sell your products, you know.
Yes.
So
yes.
I think that becomes a very, very strong motivating factor, you know. In, you know, you could be minus 10 degrees in London and you're out there still trying to sell tea because somebody in Guyana or thing is calling to find out, oh, Mr. Dalgety, when you're going to take some more lemongrass from here or something like that, because you know what, my son has got school fees or he's got exams coming up, and I really need to get this stuff here, you know. So I think those are some of the things that really pushes you really hard. It's not just the money; it's literally just being successful and trying to change your you know, communities around that you're working with.
Yes, to help people around. So how big is your team?
My team is let's see, because I've got different teams around the world. So I mean, in London, how we work, I have close teams to me. So I have like about 10 people in the UK. But then what happens then, we use a lot of consultancy and agencies. Yep. And then in Ghana here, in Guyana, I have a team of 3. But then that team of 3 looks after probably 100 farmers. So then you know, it's sort of like a pyramid situation. So I have the core people, and then the core people then find people in various regions to look after certain things, but they might not be directly employed by Dalgety. Yeah.
Gotcha.
In that way, it helps you to manage the situation better. So I would always have a core team, and then that core team, and then find subcontractors to deal with issues that we're dealing with. So then if somebody doesn't perform, it's easy to get rid of them, versus if they were actually a direct employee of Dalgety.
Okay. Use a lot of consultancies.
Yeah. So I then use external consultancies for various things in order to manage the system. Yes.
Is that going to change anytime soon? Because you're getting big now, Mark. You're getting big.
Well, we're trying to. The thing about it, you don't want to get big to an unmanageable big situation. And that's why I try to keep the teams small within me, so it's easier to be managed. And you have, you know, core people that have extended situations, you know.
Yes.
Instead of thinking that you want to have 200 people working with you directly, then that becomes a bit of a madness, you know. I prefer to just have 2 or 3 people around me, and then each one of them move on, and I have another 2 or 3 below them, and then I just deal with just a few that are around me.
Yeah, I can imagine. So your thing is moving strategically then, not too big, not too small, just enough to keep people around you that they keep you moving forward.
Yes, and I mean, especially when you're trying to grow globally, you have to move slow. Because I mean, I think when in my early days, I was much more agile and do a lot of things very fast, you know. And sometimes you do them too fast and you do trip over. So,
yes. And they say rush the brush and waste the paint.
Yeah, sometimes you try to do things extremely fast, especially when I was in my early days in business. And then you find that you either trip over, right? And you find yourself in a crisis. I mean, but it's always what we call learning experience, you know?
Yeah, it is.
As the terminology I use, I say crisis is a dangerous opportunity, you know, but you don't, a lot of times when the crisis occurs, you obviously have to find a way of dealing with it. You don't want to have too many of them, but then sometimes you have to do things, and the only way you could do it is by doing it. And only from what happens, you could learn from what you've done. It might work and it might not work.
Yes. Crisis. Say it again. Crisis.
Crisis is a dangerous opportunity.
It's a dangerous opportunity. I'm going to use that. Crisis is a dangerous opportunity.
Yes.
I'm going to use that. That's words to live by. So speaking of words to live by, anything that you have for entrepreneurs like yourself who are going global, Caribbean entrepreneurs like yourself who are going global, who would want to take their product to the next level, what's your best advice for them?
I think some of the things I normally say to people is that, first of all, you got to be determined, right? At least that's one good attribute. You need to be focused also. You know, you got a good product, focus on the product and expand on that product. Because what happens is that at every level that you try to move to, there's always a challenge.
Yes.
And sometimes what people tend to do is that they start something and they reach that level, right? And then because it's a challenge to get to the next level, they always see something else that they think is going to take them to that next level. Yes. So then they start again with this new product, and then it gets exactly the same level that they had the challenge with the original product. Yes. So they end up now in a situation whereby they actually are never moving beyond that level.
Yes.
So you normally it's better to stay focused on what you're doing, and each level that you come across a challenge, you conquer that challenge to get to the next level. You know,
I got you.
So that's why I use the word stay focused. You know.
Yes.
And I mean also is acting smart. You know, acting smart. Know your numbers is the key thing. A lot of entrepreneurs are very good at making things, but they're not very good with financial literacy. In order to go, you have to have a very strong financial, and even if you don't have it, get an accountant that knows it, that you could speak to as often as possible. Because many West Indians, I think, make very great products, but sometimes their detriment is their financial literacy in terms of making sure that they understand that they're making a profit and not just being a profit, if you understand the difference. Yeah. Right? He in business to make a profit, P-R-O-F-I-T, not be a profit, P-H-O-R-P-E-T-T. You see what I'm saying? You know what I mean to say?
Indeed.
So you know what I mean? Those are some of the things I always say is important. And then also look globally, look outside of your community, look outside of your country. You know, that's how you'll expand. You know? Yes.
So that's good. Mark, it's been a pleasure talking to you, man. So you want to tell us any more about your teas? What's going to happen now with the teas now? It's been a pleasure talking to you so far.
Yeah, well, I mean, all I could say is that, I mean, for anyone looking for Dalgety teas, obviously we sell globally online. I mean, you know, we have teas that are mailed as far as China. We even have a distributor in South Korea. You could always get our teas on www.dalgety.co. Well, not .com, .co.dalgety.co. And I mean, if you're in America, we've just started operations in America also. We didn't talk much about America, but we also have an operation now starting up in America, where anyone in America that orders our teas, they literally could get it within about 2-3 days. Wow. And I mean, hopefully this year we will get into some of the biggest supermarket chains in America at the moment. That's amazing. I mean, we do have an American move going on right now, but as I said, because Africa is basically 1.5 billion and America is 200 or 300 million, I spend more time here.
Okay, this is a growth market. You could slide right into the door, can't you?
Yes.
Yeah, that's good. Mark Dalgety, owner operator of Dalgety Teas out of the United Kingdom, a Guyanese who's living in the United Kingdom and who's doing great things around the world. Mark, thank you so much. I really appreciate this time you spent with us this afternoon on Line Vibe.
Yes, and thank you very much for inviting me to your show. It was a total pleasure.
Thank you so much, Mark. Good.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Bye-bye.